Good day, everyone. So, this story is called Ball of Fat and it's written by Guy de Maupassant. Now, Guy de Maupassant is, according to me, the god of short stories. He's quite simply the best. And I had a little difficulty choosing which story I should put before you today, but then ultimately, the glaringly obvious one had to be Ball of Fat or Boul de Suif, which is what it's known as in French. Now, before I proceed any further, I'll just say that this story is a mature one. It involves a lot of adult themes, so be careful, but at the same time, watch it because it's relevant to what is going on in the world today, even though it was written a long, long time ago. And without further ado, Guy de Maupassant, Ball of Fat, here we go. Now, this takes place when the Prussians are invading France. So, a lot of Prussian officers have gotten in with the French. They are living in the French people's homes. They are blockading the inns, blockading the roads, looking at papers. A typical wartime scenario. Now, in this situation, a bunch of people, about 10 of them, hire a coach and they try to make an escape to Havre, where some people have interests and some people want to go from there to England via sea. Now, among these travelers are two extremely pious sisters, one of whom has gotten smallpox and recovered, and they name their rosary beads throughout the journey. And there is a wine trader and his wife, and the wine trader deals in bad wine, but he has managed to make a fortune. Further, there is a count and countessa, and a couple of other wealthy men. And there is a very well known prostitute who is the heroine of our story, and her name is Ball of Fat because she's extremely plump in both face and arms, and she's also very jolly. So, a lot of people want her company. In the story, she is referred to as a coquette. Now, these people get into the carriage together at the crack of dawn, even before the sun is up, and they start traveling. And as the sunlight uh, dawns on them, they start to see each other's faces, and a couple of them recognize each other, so some conversation also ensues. But until Ball of Fat is recognized, they all think that she's just another lady. But the moment she is recognized, whispers can be heard among the women that there is a prostitute traveling with us. Now, this is where I started to take issue with the attitude of the travelers. But I'll talk to you about all of this when I finish the story. So, onward. Now, there is a snowdrift, and it has been snowing steadily for all the time that the dawn has been coming. So, there is a snowdrift in front of the carriage, and they cannot proceed it. So people got down from the carriage and they tried to unstick the wheels. So that took about 2 hours. So they're already running behind schedule. And since they all did not expect any snow, none of them have brought with them provisions. So they're getting steadily hungrier and hungrier and hungrier until at 1 o'clock the wine trader says, "I have faith I would give anything to eat something." Hearing this, Ball of Fat picks out a basket from under the seat she's sitting in and she opens it. And there are a number of delicacies inside the basket, such as a pâté de foie gras, such as a whole chicken, such as a couple of bottles of extremely expensive wine. And the other travelers, upon seeing this food, start talking to her in the hopes of getting it. Sorry, this ear started itching. So they start talking to her in hopes of getting it. And she readily obliges because she's a very decent person. So she shares the entirety of the basket, which contains about 3 days worth of food, with these travelers without a moment's hesitation. At first, she invites the wine trader to partake, then, she invites the poor sisters to partake, the pious ones. Then, bit by bit, the other people's resolve gets broken down and down and down. Even she even gets through to the countess, who feels insulted that she has to travel with a prostitute. But anyway, everyone is slowly champing away at the bit of food, and they slowly, bit by bit, arrive at an inn. Now, this is where it takes on a sudden dark twist, because at the inn is a Prussian officer who at first sees their papers, and then he calls for Bolofat by sending his lackey. The lackey says, "Is Miss Elizabeth Rousset here among you? If so, the Prussian officer wishes to see you immediately." And Bolofat has some inkling of why he wants to see her, so she refuses to go. Plus, there's another reason that she doesn't want to go. She absolutely loathes the Prussians. So she's been narrating how she drove them away from her house when they tried to come and stay, by hurling things at them or by trying to strangle them. So even her maid could not hold her back. So she has very good reason to not be present in front of a Prussian. But the other members of the party, they force her to at least meet with him, because they feel that if she creates trouble, then their journey will be affected. So now you see that they are willing to sacrifice this person for the greater good, so to speak, the greater good. And this is where I started to get a little pissed off when I was reading the story. Anyway, so she goes to the person, the officer, and obviously, being a prostitute, the officer naturally desired to have sexual relations with her. And Ball of Fat comes back in like 5 6 minutes with her face flushed with fury, screaming, "The rascal, the rascal!" And everyone is concerned. They all say that, "What has he said to you?" She's like, "I cannot repeat it." And it is in this situation that the next day they try to go on their way. But the driver has suddenly said that, "I was told by the Prussian officer not to harness the horses to the carriage." And so everyone is bewildered. So a company of men, the count, the wine seller, and one of the noblemen, the three of them make up a party, and they go to the Prussian officer, and they start talking to him that, "We wish to be on our way, sir. Why would you order the good driver not to harness the horses to the carriage?" And so the officer very nonchalantly takes a sip of tea and says, "It is because I do not wish it that you cannot go. That is all. Goodbye." And so naturally now they are very puzzled. And since the only other member of the company who has spoken to this officer one on one is Ball of Fat, they immediately surround her and ply her with questions that, "What has he asked of you? What has he asked of you?" And Ball of Fat says he wishes to know me sexually, know me in the biblical sense. And so they all say, "Oh, but aren't you a prostitute? So isn't this basically your trade?" So she's like, "So what if I'm a prostitute? Does that mean that I have to sleep with anybody and everybody who wants to?" And for 2 seconds here, I was slightly, you know, shaken that, yes, I mean, does the fact that it's a trade mean that she's got to be insulted like this, that she's got to be taken advantage of like this, that her dignity has to be put into the the fireplace every time just because it's her trade? What happened to consent? But they go on pressuring her, they go on pressuring her until at last she says, okay, it is because of this entire party of people that I will do this. And so it comes to pass that the Prussian officer gets his wish and he allows them to go on their way. But suddenly, the entire atmosphere of the carriage and its passengers, who have been saved by none other than a prostitute, start to ignore that prostitute completely. They don't look at her, they shun her, they turn their noses up at her, and as the carriage goes on and on and on slowly, all we can hear is Ball of Fat curled up in a corner, weeping hysterically. So that was Ball of Fat by Guy de Maupassant, and as has been clear during my behavior through telling this story, there is a major issue that has been highlighted in this story: the consent of an individual. I just wish to say that if somebody says they don't want to do something, take no for an answer and just move the on. End of discussion, especially if that person is a woman. You give her that respect of accepting no for an answer. You don't have to say, I'm a really nice guy, so I want to go out with you, and stuff like that. And you definitely do not violate her without her consent. Otherwise, you do realize that Ball of Fat was basically raped. And that is what I believe is at the crux of this story. It's a story about somebody who willingly got raped, or rather, an unusual situation where someone was raped. And frankly speaking, I deliberately did this story to make a few of you realize that this is what literature can do. And I repeat, take no for an answer, because consent is extremely important. It doesn't matter if it's a rickshaw puller, or if it's a prostitute, or if it's the goddamn general manager of a company. No is no. That's all I've got for you today, and I hope to see you soon with another story. I'll have to think about what I do next, so I'm not saying what I'm going to do, but it won't be. It'll. I think it'll be a modern story set in the contemporary era, because I just went back into the past. So take care of yourself, stay safe and vigilant. We will meet again next week. Until then, stay happy, stay safe, and this is the Bills Master signing off.